If you're managing a sales pipeline, you're probably also managing a data enrichment problem or challenge. You have a list of companies you want to reach out to, but the data isn't really there. So you can't make personalized outreach. You're not sure if they're a good ICP fit, and you just don't have that context. Of course, data enrichment tools exist to solve that. And one of the biggest names right now is Clay. Clay connects to over 150 data providers and has a powerful AI research agent built specifically for sales teams doing high volume outbound at scale. But Streak, which is a CRM built inside Gmail, recently launched AI features that do a lot of the same things. So I wanted to find out, how do they actually compare? And of course, I work at Streak, so I'll be upfront about that. And instead of just telling you that Streak is great or just showing you Streak and how we do it, I figured we'd do a little side-by-side comparison. So we're going to run some experiments in each tool and just see what the output is and if it's useful and what the differences are. I did also write a detailed blog post about each of these tools, and it covers a lot more of the features and benefits of each one. Right now, we're really just focusing on AI data enrichment since that's kind of a newer feature that people are interested in. But there's a full decision framework with features, pricing, and everything in the blog post, which is linked in the description below. So let's get into it. What we're going to do first is just add a new company and see how each of these tools enriches the company. So I'm going to add it in here in Streak. We're going to use Lavender, which is a real company. It's a mid-sized company that I picked at random so that we can find real information on it. So we'll add it here in Streak. So you can tell it's already enriched it. We have this custom logo. We can open up the organization and see that Streak pulled all of this publicly available data, including social media, location, employees, and we can jump right to any of their social media pages and do more research on them. Let's do the same thing in Clay and see what happens. So we're going to add Lavender AI, and it is similarly going to enrich that. What Clay does, and it's using those 150 data providers, it's going to give you more structured data than what we saw in Streak. So, for example, it shows that it was founded in 2020. And then you can create a new column out of this if you want, so that you have all of this information in a structured manner that you could filter on, stuff like that. You can also accomplish this in Streak using AI research, which we're about to see. But it's worth noting that Clay is going to do this off the bat and give you a bit more kind of structured information that it's getting from these proprietary databases. So let's jump into our first AI experiment. And actually, we're going to start in Clay. And so the way that we're going to do this is add a new column that uses AI. And I'm going to, like I mentioned, add the same prompt into each tool, same exact prompt, and see what we get. So one thing I will note is that Clay will optimize your prompt for you. So it's sort of like you prompt a prompt. So let's just try it out and, we'll see if it helps out or gives us a different result or anything. So it's sculpting our prompt, and you're going to see it gives us this really detailed suggested prompt. It's going to give it detailed instructions. It's going to tell us what to research, what type of information to extract, and all of this, I'd say, looks great. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to hit don't run because I want to run it manually on this just one cell. And so you'll see that Clay just made a lot of columns for us. And what it's doing here is it wants to give us structured data. So we'll see how this works, and I'll show you in just a moment. So let's get this running for Lavender. We hit the little play button here, and it's going to run. We'll see that it's starting. And I have noticed when I was experimenting that Clay does take a longer time than Streak. So what we're going to do is get this started here, and we'll let it run, and we'll go put the same prompt into Streak, and then we'll compare notes. So similarly, what we're going to do here is add a column. And we can title our column funding history. And then we're going to customize the prompt. Streak allows you to run AI on the deal itself. So this would include any of the email history, team collaboration that's happened inside the deal, or you can do web research, which is what we want to do here. So same exact prompt. Let's hit save, and we'll run it on that field. And let's see, Clay is still thinking, and we'll come over and see what Streak comes up with first. Okay, so it's giving us a bunch of information here. So it's talking about a seed round, a Series A round, and then the total raised. So this is the output that's going to be in our pipeline field, obviously. Some of the reasoning here. And then we can open this up and see a much more detailed explanation. So, it says it raised 13.2 million total. It has these known seed and Series A rounds, and it gives some more information on those. You can click through to sources that it's citing. And then this is that single field entry that we saw. Okay, so let's go see what we have in Clay. It's still thinking, but I think it's probably getting close. There we go. We got our Clay results. So yeah, we have the same results. So it had 13.2 million total. It talks about the seed and the Series A. I think the key takeaways here are that the data quality and the data is equivalent. They both arrived at the same answer. They both used similar sources. Output differs between the two in terms of the format and the structure. But, the web research performed comparably, and it did real research and gave us the answer that we were looking for. So for our next experiment, we're going to try something that's way more subjective. I want it to actually write a personalized email intro opener. Streak and Clay each have tools that then allow you to plug this opener into an actual email that you send. So Clay is going to have its own tool, and then Streak has Mail Merge, which sends through your Gmail inbox. So once again, I'm going to use the same prompt in both of these. For this one, I'm going to try not having Clay optimize it, and we're just going to use prompt as I wrote it, and as I'm also going to use it in Streak. So this says a bit about our coffee business. Research the company and write a one-sentence personalized cold email opener. So I'm going to save that, and we'll get this started in Clay. So we have this new column, cold email opener. We will run that. And let's go over and get this started also in Streak. So we're going to add another column. We'll call it personalized opener. And then we're going to add this prompt, same exact prompt. That's saved. We will run the autofill there. So this will now start thinking, and we'll head over to Clay. Still thinking. Yeah, and so what's interesting about this is that, again, it's very subjective, and I think the more that you can give it in the prompt about the voice or the tone that you want, the better result you'll have. But as you saw, we gave it a pretty generic prompt, and we're going to see what happens. So Streak said, saw Lavender help sales teams write better emails faster with AI coaching, and it seemed fitting to reach out because great office coffee can play a surprisingly similar role in keeping high-performing teams sharp and energized. Okay. So again, subjective, you'll have to decide what you think about that. We'll head over to Clay. Got it. So this didn't quite get the prompt that we gave it. It's kind of telling me like how to write it, but it's not actually writing it itself. So I wonder if I have it optimize the prompt that I gave it, if it would give a better result. And I'm going to have Clay optimize it and just see what happens. So the prompt that I typed into Streak and it gave us this opener did not work in Clay. We got an answer. So Clay's cold email opener is congrats on your 11 million Series A. If you're expanding teams post-funding, we can keep your offices energized with reliable weekly deliveries of freshly roasted beans and equipment. So in this case, when we used the optimized version that Clay suggested and it wrote the prompt for us, it did come up with something that could then be plugged into an email and sent as a cold email intro. And again, like I mentioned, this is pretty subjective. It's up to you to decide what you like better. And then I did notice that Clay seems to sort of latch on to a specific event that recently happened and try to make a tie-in with that. Whereas Streak attempts to connect more with the core identity or the mission of Lavender. So this may end up being a little bit more evergreen. So it's a different approach. I think both of them are totally usable openers that are genuinely personalized. So I think this is a super interesting use case. And the way that you would then use this in Streak is you would write a mail merge and you'd add that in your first sentence. You'd say, hey, first name, and then have the personalized opener variable, and then go into the rest of your pitch or information or a demo link or whatever you wanted to send them. So for the final experiment, we're going to have Streak and Clay evaluate if this is an ideal customer profile fit. So we're going to go in and for the last time, add a new column here. We'll call it ICP fit, and then we'll go in and add our prompt. And it asks if this company is a good potential customer, answer yes or no, and give a 2-sentence reason. So we'll save that. And we will run it on this field. And then we're going to come into Clay. We're going to add a new column. We'll use AI. Let's have it optimize it again since that worked better last time. So it's going to sculpt our prompt and give us this suggested prompt, which as you've seen in the past was really detailed. Okay, so now we have this customer fit. Again, it's kind of adding all these new columns. We'll hit run here and we'll head over to Streak. So this says, Streak says no. It says Lavender is the likely employee count and funding to afford premium office perks, but it's a software company rather than food and beverage. There's no clear public evidence that quality coffee is a meaningful part of its culture. So again, we can kind of see the reasoning here, and Clay is still thinking. So we'll let it think and see what it comes up with. Okay, so let's take a look at this response. It says Lavender's team is reported as 16 employees. It shows no office coffee perks or food service operations, so it doesn't meet the criteria. So that's very similar to what Streak found. Clay is saying that it has 16 employees. I'm wondering, did it have anywhere in here? Oh yeah, so one thing that's interesting is it does show the employee count as 132 right here. We're getting some conflicting information between the data enrichment that Clay did and the information that it has here, where it says it's reported as 16 employees. So kind of interesting discrepancy there. But at the end of the day, both Clay and Streak came up with the same results. So I think some of the key takeaways from these experiments are that both of them reached a lot of the same conclusions, did a lot of the same research, which sort of makes sense because they're using AI and AI is working similarly in both of these tools. However, I think what we saw is that Streak's output was a little bit more thorough and nuanced in some of these, whereas Clay tries to give you more structured output for pipeline use. So you'll see that it gave us a specific column, which you could imagine would say like yes, no, throughout this whole lead list. And it always wants to give us kind of more structured use. But both of them were doing genuine reasoning. They're not just pattern matching, but they're actually visiting sites. They're visiting off-site pages like LinkedIn or blog posts or, websites like TechCrunch. And they're not just kind of like checking the boxes. And then finally, we obviously saw that Streak was a lot faster. So that was consistent across every experiment. Clay took a lot longer. And so if you're, working through and you're trying to get these answers as you're about to email this person or something, you might value that speed that Streak offers. Whereas if you're going through and working on a database, maybe you can run it on your full database and walk away and do something else in Clay, and that would be fine for you. And then also when we had this more subjective one with this cold email opener, we saw that if we didn't have Clay optimize our prompt, it didn't perform as we expected or as we wanted it to. But I think the big thing is, Clay's always going to try to give you this more structured data, whereas Streak is going to give more rich, nuanced data, it seems like. And then the key comes down to what do you do with that data? So in Streak, you can work through your pipeline. You can add any of this information to a mail merge. One thing that's great about Streak is that in any deal, you can come in and query the deal. So you can ask questions about their funding or their company culture, and it will refer to any of this information that you've added in this deal. So this becomes much more of a workspace, whereas Clay is more suited towards segmenting a lead list and then doing something with that lead list that's not necessarily in Clay. It does seem like they're building out some more features, so check out the blog post to learn more about what each of these tools is more capable of, how their pricing works, and kind of work through a whole decision framework.